On the cranes front, we've got the largest capacity as of now is 800 tons.
Manufacturing of these construction equipment is absolutely non-existent.
The plethora of opportunities that have opened up over the last couple of years, the requirement of machines is at such large pace and these large machines are not manufactured in India. With projects, we are not very actively working with the real estate sector, be it our equipment rental or our delivery of steel, right? So it's more project driven.
We've done close to 70 crores last year,
right?
And now this year you're doing another 100 crores this financial year. How will that impact your top line directly? Hi everyone, today we are with Tara Chand InfraLogistic Solutions. We have with us Mr. Himanshu Aggarwal, who is the whole-time director, second generation entrepreneur and the CFO as well of the company. So thank you so much for having us and thanks for your hospitality.
Thank you for having me and thank you for coming down to our office for this interaction.
Thanks and great. So these are the machineries you work with?
Yes, so these are models of the machines, of the different types of machines. This is a crane, that's a man lift or aerial working platform, and that's a piling rig, which does the boring in the groundwork.
Okay, and the real equipments are much bigger than this?
Yeah, much bigger and much heavier. This class would not be able to stand a very basic size of that machine.
Awesome. So, from what I understand, just going to the business directly, you operate through a couple of segments. One is that you are into leasing of equipments, the construction equipments, like you just mentioned. And second is you're doing like warehousing, logistics, transportation of steel.
Right.
Two segments, like more or less, if I had to break it down. Now, can you explain in very simple terms what each of this is?
Okay, so our first segment, which is the construction equipment rental, as you talked about these machines. So we are into providing machines on rent along with the operation and the maintenance of the machine in our scope to clients for various projects across sectors like infra development. There is manufacturing plants like steel, cement, oil and gas sector, and then we've recently entered the renewable energy sector with wind and solar as well. And we are in the infra sector, we are across, because infra is a very vast term. So in the infra sector, we are working with metro rail development. We've been working across the country, be it Delhi, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Chennai, Bangalore. In the eastern side, if we talk about Patna or Indore in the central region. So we've been working across the country for the metro rail network. And then we have been very active in the high-speed rail network, that the first bullet train that is popularly known as, that is coming up between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. So there we've been associated across our different activities that we do in the equipment rental. So one is crane rentals. Second is piling rigs, which as I showed you, it is used for boring and groundwork. And then there are aerial working platforms, which are working at various heights.
So aerial meaning like you want to lift a man to a certain height to get some work done.
Exactly. So a lot of activity that is now done at heights like above 30 meters, above 25 meters. We have our aerial working platform currently, the tallest in the world, 68 meters. And the next, which could be another addition, would be 72 meters. So basically these are used at these very high areas for carrying out basic maintenance activity or basic, let's say even you have to do a painting work in a plant which at a very height level. So these machines are used there. Earlier, traditionally, scaffoldings were used where people had to climb up scaffolding, which was a very unsafe method to do. So now India is slowly graduating to the concept of safety of the men who are involved in these jobs, and that is why these machines are of very critical importance in these plants and even in the infrastructure works. On the cranes front, we've got the largest capacity as of now is 800 tons, which we had brought in earlier this year, and we are adding on more and more machines with the kind of Capex we keep doing. So that is a gist of our construction equipment rentals. On the warehousing and logistics side, so we have been associated with Steel Authority of India Limited and Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited for almost 4 decades now. We actually started out as a steel distribution company, which was a proprietorship back in the 1980s when the first generation started the company. And then we progressed.
Steel distribution meaning buying and selling, trading.
Yeah, buying and basically trading of
Yeah.
steel in Punjab, where we are originally from. So then we progressed from a trading company to a service-oriented company in 1991 when we started working with Steel Authority of India Limited. And from there on, with Steel Authority itself, we worked across the country at various warehouses owned by Steel Authority of India Limited, where we have managed the entire steel that comes into the warehouse and then is distributed across the various clients, end user clients of SAIL itself. And similarly with Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited, we are associated with them for managing one is their mother stockyard, the central dispatch yard of the Visakhapatnam steel plant in Visakhapatnam. So the entire production that happens, which is evacuated by our trailers to the central dispatch yard, and from there on we then forward dispatch it to the various locations across the country as per the guidelines of the client. Then apart from the central dispatch yard, we are working with them at their various branch warehouses. So like Mumbai is with us, where the warehouse is owned by them, but we are managing the entire incoming and outgoing steel, and the entire the security of the steel is also our scope. Then we have a concept of where the warehouse is owned by us, but we are managing the entire steel incoming and outgoing also. So it's a concept mix of either the warehouse being owned by us or owned by the client.
Understood. Okay, to summarize the two segments, first segment that is into construction equipment rentals. You buy the equipments, give the high price, buy the equipments from China or European regions, and you rent it out to companies in India, because they wouldn't be able to afford such a high upfront payment. For the
not
machinery.
Necessarily afford, it is not their core business. So their core business is running the steel plant or constructing the steel plant, or probably their core business as a Larsen and Toubro. Their core business is constructing the metro or the high speed rail that is being done. So they do not want to shift, as this is to our best understanding. Their focus is to maintain their speed of project delivery rather than being occupied towards equipment rental or equipment management. And these equipment have to then move from project to project. So let's say my one machine works for 2 years at a project, but what after 2 years? So for a bigger company like L&T or the main client, they do not want to bother themselves with the next source of revenue for that machine. So that is where the rental companies come into the picture.
Understood. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, SAIL, there's nothing that SAIL
cannot buy.
afford.
Yes, right.
So that is one bit of the business. And second is the transportation that you provide for steel. Let's say from manufacturer to the port, to the manufacturer to the client, end user client, right?
And the warehousing of it.
And the warehousing, like let's say, for example, let's say Tata Steel has its own warehousing, but they'll use your equipments to move the steel from the truck to their warehouse, and you'll handle it.
Right. So the entire manpower and the equipment for managing the steel is in our scope. So as I talked about the Visakhapatnam steel plant, so whatever is manufactured, our trailers go in. Material gets loaded on those trailers, and they move out to the central dispatch yard at the various locations. So material has to be unloaded and stacked as per the client directions. Then subsequently, that material has to be loaded onto wagons or trailers. Wagons is rail wagons, or trailers for road dispatch or railway dispatch to various end user destinations.
Understood. So let's talk more about the first area of the business. Like, where do you buy these machineries from?
So predominantly the machines we buy from are from China, primarily because of their speed of delivery and the cost competitiveness. So the machines are very similar to what are available in Europe, but the challenge with Europe is there is a very high cost of purchase, and two is the delivery speed is much lesser. So probably that is why the cost is also very high. And in the landscape of the Indian growth story that is happening, the plethora of opportunities that have opened up over the last couple of years, the requirement of machines is at such large pace and these large machines are not manufactured in India. So we have to anyways import those machines, and China is the best option for that.
When I look at capital goods industry, capital goods, I think 70%, like let's say there are top 4 capital goods companies. It can be Anub Engineering, Patel Engineering. They're mostly into heat exchangers. There are hardly any companies that manufacture, let's say, a crane or a man lift machine. It's very rare. And I've heard that even if there is a company in India, it will cost you, let's say, for example, 5 crores to buy that machine in India. But if you were to import it from China, maybe it'll cost you 2 crores and let's say 20% import duty, and still it'll cost you maximum 2.4 crore. And it's still cheaper to get from China.
Right. See, for the smaller machines, up until for cranes, if I talk about 100 tons capacity, that is this space where Indian manufacturing is still developing, and there
Okay.
are companies. One of the best that I know of is Action Construction Equipment,
Okay.
who is one of the leaders for equipment manufacturing in India in this space.
In this space,
But they are known primarily for a lot of their tower cranes
Yeah.
that they supply, and the pick and carry cranes. These are smaller cranes up to 25, 30 tons capacities. When we talk about these large machines, as I talked about the 800 ton, so the comparison with Indian manufacturing cannot be done because there is no scope yet of any manufacturing happening in India. So that comparison is not there with us. But between a European and a Chinese machine, if I compare the pricing, yes, the differential is close to about 50%.
Okay. Now, can I say that from what you've said, the Indian market for manufacturing of these construction equipment is absolutely dead, absolutely non-existent?
Yes, as of today, yes, but we do see opportunity that
Yeah.
there would be slowly growth happening, and once the larger tonnage machines might also get started manufacturing in India itself. We do know that a lot of these Chinese companies are doing part assembly in India, so machines come in from China and then they're assembled and manufactured in India per se. But that is still part assembly, so it's not a full manufacturing yet. And with time, there is scope with Indian demand always rising, and it is consistently going up. That the manufacturing companies might look at the opportunity to also start manufacturing these cranes here.
No, absolutely. When you get these machineries to India, I have heard a lot of stories where a new manufacturer, they've opened shop, they've opened their factory facility, got the land, everything is sorted. They bought the machine from China, but they don't. Once they operate it for a month, something breaks down, something very minor, and they need a Chinese engineer to come and fix them. But Chinese engineers, now the problem is that the visa is not so easy for them to get.
Right.
And when you rent these equipments to your clients, do you face this similar issue?
So no, with our machines, the way we have it is these Chinese manufacturers who are supplying machines here, they've got their India setup where they've got a large network of service engineers who are Indians and who are well versed with the machines. Although some challenges do arise with regards to Chinese engineers not visiting India, but Indian engineers are going to these factories of the Chinese manufacturers and getting trained there. And they are ensuring that there is a plethora of engineers available in India to handle these machines. On top of that, we've got our own team of engineers and experts who we get them trained from the original equipment manufacturer.
Okay.
And we ensure that we do not face any such challenge where a Chinese engineer is not available. So regardless of these machines being very sophisticated in nature, be it mechanical, electrical or hydraulic, but we've got it all covered through our own team and as well as the Indian engineers of these manufacturers.
Okay, absolutely. So do you like send them to China to learn?
Yeah, we
Okay.
do. We have call it an exchange program
Yeah.
of sorts where our team goes to China for about a month or so when required, and it is in conjunction with the original equipment manufacturer itself. So they're basically doing hands-on training at their factories.
Yeah, awesome. And so once you got this machine, you've rented it out. This costs you money, and since this is a machinery, it's not land or any sort of basic equipment that you're using, which can be used for 30, 40 years. What about the depreciation? Because that should be a huge component. I checked. If I take the average of the last two financial year, your net block, meaning net assets, the gross assets minus the depreciation bit, FY23, FY24 average comes somewhere around 152 crores.
Right.
And your depreciation for the year of FY24 was like 28 crores.
Right.
So it comes to around 18%
Roughly
depreciation.
18%, yes.
So you are bearing an 18% depreciation irrespective of if you get the client's order or not, right?
Right. So, see, that is why the policy we follow is when we purchase a machine,
Yeah.
it is backed up by orders.
Yeah.
and we look at the visibility of the type of machine that by being in this industry for almost 2 decades now, for more than 2 decades now, we understand that a machine utilization at a certain project would be for X number of months or X number of years, and subsequently similar projects that are already coming up or are already existing in operation. So these machines could be moved there. So we always have this backing of contracts in place when we are purchasing machines, right? So it's never about buying a machine for the sake of bringing it and keeping it as an exhibition for the rest of the people. But maintaining high levels of occupancy again is a challenge to ensure that we have the network that we have with our clients. We are working across 21 states.
Yeah.
At present, we have almost 70 plus live sites where equipment is operational, and the network of clientele that we have maintained is across various sectors. So we are not any concentrated in a specific sector, which we were a couple of years ago. We have diversified from infrastructure being our core sector 2 years ago into largely into steel, cement, oil and gas, power sector as well, and then recently into the renewable energy.
Yeah.
So that has helped us to ensure that the machinery is always deployed at optimum level, which is close to anywhere between 80 to 85% is the optimum occupancy level in our industry. So
then, as a counter to that, in 2020, when it was like, and the economy was dead,
Right.
there was hardly any movement of capital goods or steel or whatever it may be. Then, and how did you do like the huge capex you did? I don't have the exact figure. You did a huge capex, and I'm sure that would have been the reason that gave you good growth in 2021, 2022 when the uptick happened again.
right.
And that got you to where the company is today. So despite having no order, no outlook in 2020, why would you do that capex?
So in 1920 is when we did a majority of the capex.
1920.
2019-20, right? So in 2019/20 financial year. So that is when we had a lot of orders and we were working with the infra sector. And a majority of the capex we did at that time was towards piling rigs and cranes.
Okay.
Majority for piling rigs and then cranes as well. Then 2020 is in March 2020 is when the COVID first wave happened, and there was a total standstill of sorts. But subsequently, all the construction activity was given a go ahead by the government, and that is where the machinery was still being utilized. We faced challenges that although machine was running, but the availability of the labor for running those construction sites was a big challenge for our clients, and that is why there was a lot of idling of machinery. So that led to a big challenge in the 2020 to 21 financial year, and then 21-22 is when the 2021-22 is when the uptick started happening. So that is when the change also became evident. So when we bought those machines, which was about, I think we did about 65 odd crores of capex in 2019-20. That was with the orders that were already there from our infra companies. But COVID was obviously unprecedented, so nobody could have guessed that it was going to happen. But when things got stabilized, we were very well placed to then take advantage of the uptick. So that helped.
Then when you supply these goods on rental, do you supply the manpower as well, right?
Yes.
So if the machine is idle, whose responsibility is it to pay?
If the machine is idle as part of a running contract, then it is the client's responsibility, because the contract is, let's say, for a 6-month period and the work is being carried out, and usually there would be chances where a crane is deployed at the site, but it is not being used every day. So, but they have taken it on rent for it's a monthly rental, right? It's not a daily or an hourly rental. So in that case, they have to pay for it. In certain contracts, which are special contracts for, let's say, short period jobs, where it is on a day basis, then it depends. If it is that idling is in our scope, then we have to bear it. But in general, as an industry standard, idling is in the client scope during the duration of the contract. Once the contract is completed and the machine has been dehired, then idling is in our scope if it is not moving to another site.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if a COVID happens tomorrow and let's say all your machines are given under contract, who is bearing the losses now?
So there again, it is a case-to-case basis.
Okay.
And there is no blanket clause in our contracts for COVID-like situations. Although there are in the past, like we faced, there were cases where client was not willing to pay, and there was a lot of idling. So we had to have an sit down across the table and take a call on who could bear how much.
Yeah.
So as I said, COVID was unprecedented, so that is something that we had to do it for the first time. Going forward, we also in our contracts try to make sure that force majeure clauses are such where it is not one-sided. So, but again, it is a challenge that when idling does happen due to force majeure, it becomes difficult for both parties to come to a very happy solution. So someone has to take a cut, and both sides then come to a conclusion that makes it suitable for both parties.
Cool, understood. And so if 18% is your depreciation, like I mentioned, you should be making at least 2%, 3% per month on the as the rental yield.
Right. So as of last year, our yield was 2.85%
Per month.
per month.
Yeah.
And this in Q1, we were at about 2.9, 2.93%. So that is because one, as we talked about earlier, the cost of purchase is lower being a Chinese equipment. Two, they are spread across the sectors where certain sectors are better paying sectors, or the kind of machinery we have and the network and the rapport we have with clientele, that we are able to secure orders that enable us to maintain those levels of average rental yields. And these, when we talk about these yields, these are gross yields which we calculate on the gross market value of that machine as on date.
Okay, got it. And now coming into the second segment of yours, which is handling steel. I
Right.
would put it. So steel industry as a whole, how it's been, meaning is it that when steel price increases, your business flourishes, or is it like has it got to do with the steel cycle, price cycle?
We haven't seen the steel price having a very direct impact on our operations in the steel warehousing and logistics, because we are not into selling of steel.
Right.
So our contract with the clients is based on the tonnage of steel that we handle.
Yeah.
So every ton of steel that we unload or we load or we stack, there is a price as per the contract which needs to be paid to us. And regardless of the steel price cycle, the manufacturing at the plants continues. It might slow down sometime, it might pick up pace. And traditionally, the first 2 quarters of the financial year tend to be on the slower side, and the last 2 quarters for both our segments, be it equipment rentals or be it the steel sector, both these segments, we have seen that the last two quarters tend to contribute about 55% of the overall revenue.
Okay.
More than 55 rather. Okay. So those 2 quarters are the key quarters, and which are independent. The cycle of the steel price doesn't directly impact our logistic business accordingly. Although the demand in the steel industry is dependent primarily on the kind of activity that is happening across the board, right? So if infra is booming and if there is demand in the construction sector, so steel is where all that steel is going into those different projects. And our job is to handle that steel and then get it transported. So we do not necessarily get impacted by the steel price per se.
Understood. Now, just coming on to the industry, this might not directly impact you, but from what I have known is, let's say India's capacity is 130 million tons per annum to manufacture
Right.
steel. Okay, and China's is 10
Almost 10x, yeah.
10x, around 1,200 million tons per annum.
Per annum.
And currently, with the real estate slowdown, which has become very cliche story these days, their demand is 900 million tons. So this extra supply that is there in the Chinese market is now coming to India.
Right.
So, I mean, if I was a business person, why wouldn't I buy it? Steel is steel at the end of the day.
Right.
Iron is iron. So now government is thinking from 7.5 import duty, we'll raise it up to maybe 12%, 15% to safeguard the local players.
The anti-dumping duty.
But don't you think it's like a chicken and egg problem, right? If you do that, then construction industry, the building industry, it will slow down in India because steel is more expensive. If I have to buy from a local producer at 100 rupees, while I can get from China for 80 rupees, and government is forcing me to buy for 100 rupees from
Right,
the,
right.
won't it slow down?
See, it's a very broad view probably because there's politics involved in that, and there's the macroeconomic as well as the microeconomic factors that go into it. But overall, when we look at the demand in an industry for construction activity, now the projects we are working with, there mostly it is defined in the project that they have to use Indian manufactured steel.
Okay.
Right? So we are not working with projects, we are not very actively working with the real estate sector,
Okay.
be it our equipment rental or our
Right.
delivery of steel, right? So it's more project driven. And with regards to the manufacturers, be it Steel Authority of India Limited and Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited, where we are doing the warehousing activity. So as I said, our contract is based on the tonnage of steel we handle,
Right.
which we have to do as per the production that is happening at the plants. So there again, those factors might be impacting the sales of RNL and sale per se, but with the government protecting those interests, so that is something which we feel shields us from those challenges in a way. But whether that impacts the real estate sector in a big way, as you asked, I do not necessarily have any
Absolutely.
clear understanding on that.
So is more capacity coming up now in India?
More capacity, yes, definitely, because see, we are working across the steel plants, be it AMNS, which is ArcelorMittal, Nippon
Okay.
Steel. Then we are working with Tata Steel, JSW. All of these plants are under major expansion sprees.
Wow.
So the capacity expansion, that the way we see it is, and we keep hearing that there are new plants more being planned or being announced. So India is under a big expansion spree on manufacturing front, because even in the cement sector, if we look at it, be it Ultratech, be it Adani now, with Adani taking over Ambuja and ACC, then there is Shree Cement, all the big cement companies, either they are taking over smaller companies and then going into an expansion spree, or expanding on their own.
Yeah.
So expansion is the buzzword right now, and everybody seems to be very actively pursuing expansion in this current phase of the India's growth story. And that is also visible in the infra growth that the country is seeing, because there's a lot of space where we see even metro projects getting extended, right? So
Yeah.
if Mumbai already had 300 odd kilometers, a new line is already being planned or is being announced or is already announced. So those are the kind of projects that we look at. We talked about the high-speed rail. So a recent report I read was that 7 more high-speed rail networks have already been studied or are under some stage of being studied or announced. So that is the kind of expansion that India is currently looking at, which is what gives us more, more hope, and it gives us more energy rather to keep pushing for ensuring that we keep growing along with that pace, and ensure that our company also is able to contribute productively towards this nation building activity.
Then now a couple of very other miscellaneous questions I had. The capex for renting these equipments, you need to do capex.
Right,
So you have done close to 70 crores last year,
right.
and now this year you're doing another 100 crores this financial year. How will that impact your top line directly?
Okay. So we did 70 odd crores last year, and then we also made an announcement that we have signed an annual purchase plan of about 160 odd crores for procurement of cranes specifically, and aerial working platforms. So that 160 odd crores originally we had planned was to be distributed as 80 crores in FY25 and 80 in FY26. But with the speed of demand that we have seen, we have recalibrated it to 100 crores in this FY, which is FY25, and 60 odd crores in FY26, unless new capex is planned for the next year. With regards to top line, it is the growth that we envisage that it is going to get us is close to about 30 odd % on a year-on-year basis.
Okay.
So we have set an aggressive target for ourselves, as we stated in our earlier con calls as well, that the company is targeting a 30% year-on-year growth for this financial year.
Okay, oh, excellent. Now, can I ask you a very basic question? If I look at, you're giving it on rent, right? So, if I, let's say, these furnitures,
Right.
there are many companies that rents furniture,
Right.
Furlanco, Rent Mojo, and they've been consistently loss making.
Right. Okay.
Because the problem is that when they came up with this concept, it's very fancy. Because if I'm moving to a new city for a
Right.
job, I'd rather rent
Right,
it, right?
right.
The furniture as well. But because of this no cost EMIs, like Amazon, I can buy a sofa for no cost EMI, maybe
Right.
1%, 2%, they'll cut behind my back as processing fee. Because of that, these companies have suffered, these
Okay.
furniture renting companies. Similarly, what is the, if a company has to get equipment financed through the bank,
Right.
how much is the interest rate they would have to pay?
See, it all depends on your own credit profile. But if I talk about our company, we've enjoyed a very successful relationship with banks for the last 4 decades, right? And it's a blemish-free banking record where there's not been a single default ever. And we are working with the best of banks, our primary banker being State Bank of India, and then HDFC, Axis Bank, IndusInd, Kotak Mahindra. So all the big names, ICICI. So we talk about big banking names, and we have been working with them. And the limits that we get sanctioned because of the relationship we enjoy with them and the credibility of the company over the years. So we've got, if we look at it, our last year's financial year 23-24, average cost of borrowing was 8.38%, which to our knowledge is among the best in the industry. And we are always working towards bringing it only down further, right? And that we see happening in this financial year. We are targeting a lower number than that. So we do always work towards ensuring that our cost of borrowing is low, because that is where we have to maintain our competitive advantage with regards to the competition in the market. From what I know, there are people who have to shell out even as high as 15%
Okay.
For equipment rental when they are purchasing, depending on it being a smaller company. For larger companies, it can range anywhere between 10 to 12% as well.
So I called up Sriram Finance yesterday, and
Okay.
I said I want to buy 5 lakh worth of a man lift.
Okay.
And I asked them, what is the least which you provide? They said, I can't tell you over phone, you have to visit the branch.
Right.
So obviously I'm not going to visit the branch just for. And they said starting is 12%.
Okay.
So you're saying that as long as you are borrowing just maybe at 10%, 8%, and with that money you're able to buy the equipment,
yes.
and then rent it out, you're in a good shape.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because our cost of borrowing is very important, because we are a Capex heavy
Yeah.
company, right? So here we have to ensure that the cost of finance has to be very low for us to be competitive. And that is why we have maintained that the banking structure that we've maintained, we've ensured that that cost remains low.
So if you're getting at below 9%, that means these equipments are secured. Meaning
Right.
this is a secured loan, right?
Yes.
Yeah, understood.
So the equipment is the collateral.
Collateral,
to
yeah.
the bank.
Yeah, got it. Excellent. Now, can I ask you a very blunt question?
Mm-hmm.
There is a company, Tarachand Industrials Limited.
Right.
So, is that into the same business as yours?
So no, Tarachand Industries Limited. It was formed in 1997, as it is. It's actually a public limited company since then, and that is where our primarily hospitality business happens, and
Okay.
that started out as a hospitality company itself. There are certain equipment that have been purchased over the years in that company, because of certain banking lines that were issued
Okay.
in that company, and so certain rental activity happens there. But both the companies are independent of each other, and they are if they are in the similar line of business also, it is to different clients.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Because this is where it tickled my mind that there were not material, but there was some like running into a couple of crores
Right.
related party transaction
Right.
on the last page of the annual report. That's why I had to
So
ask you this.
whatever the related party transactions are, these are backed up by genuine work orders, and whatever is there, it is at arm's length and as per relevant or standards of practice that a business should follow.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you what we did. I don't want you to comment on this. It's absolutely fine. Once I got to know the related party transaction, I've not really mentioned this ever in the interview how we do it. So I went to your Tara Chand industrial companies
Okay.
filings in the
Okay.
ROC because
Right.
and
There it's also
I saw
filing.
that the revenues are much greater than what you are dealing with them. So
Right.
it's not material as
Yes,
such.
yes,
So that
absolutely.
gave me the confidence to
Yeah,
really
yeah.
interview
So
you.
it's a much smaller company. See, there when you talk about Tara Chand Industries, I think if I remember correctly, the annual turnover is about 12 to 15 odd crores only. So,
Yeah.
which is very minute when it comes to we talk about the main company, which is Tara Chand InfraLogistic.
Excellent. And if I like, you studied from the US, you did biomedical.
Yes, I did.
Biomedical
Biomedical
engineering.
engineering.
Yeah. So what's with this? Like, what's into logistics?
I always wanted to be an engineer,
Yeah.
and back in the days, I went when I was 2005 is when I went for engineering, and that time biomedical was seen as the one of the most challenging engineering streams
Yeah.
where I was going to study, which was Northwestern University, Chicago. So I chose that to challenge myself, and I always had being from a business family, always had the entrepreneurial drive, wanted to come back and make it big with the company that was the platform that was already established. So while I was at Northwestern, I also had the great opportunity to be associated with the Center of Entrepreneurship at Northwestern, which is part of the Kellogg School of Management, which happens to be one of the best business schools in the world. So that helped me keep my entrepreneurial drive alive while in college, and I did a lot of activity with the certificate courses which were available to undergrads at that time at Kellogg, or doing summer school, some of the courses there. So that helped me bring back knowledge and some sort of learning that I could apply to my work here. So it's been a great journey. I've always enjoyed the moments, the time that I spent as an engineer there, and that analytical skill that you learn as an engineer. It helps you wade through various challenges, regardless of which industry you're working in. So that's been very helpful.
Excellent. I think I have everything. I've asked you every question I need.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.